My love for animation knows no end. The constant thirst I have for every facet of this area is driven by some unknown fuel burning in my soul. I'm a vehicle, and cartoons power me in this metaphorical world in my head. As you know, fuel costs money, and the astronomical numbers I'm told when hearing of how much a cartoon, anime, or animated movie costs to create, it truly puzzled me. So I wanted to dig deeper into this and really try to break these large numbers down as best as I can, so I can understand what goes into the process like this, and why it has to cost so much in the end. First off, when asking the general question of how much does making a cartoon cost, is in itself a very gray area question. Every cartoon is unique and tailor-made, so the cost varies widely based on that. You could make a stop-motion cartoon by yourself in your basement with a camera and a decent PC for next to nothing in cost since you're doing it all by yourself. But when it comes to a larger scale, on a bigger scene, is when the numbers really start to climb. The very first steps in making a cartoon is obviously coming up with an idea for one, building a world, creating characters, a plot good enough to stretch a couple seasons. Is your idea marketable for the future? If the network executives approve of all of this, then you'll be cleared for a pilot episode and hopefully be able to make an entire season. Mind you, that it's next to impossible to just walk into a studio and propose your cartoon idea. Usually you have to already be working with a studio for quite some time to have the ability to pitch an idea. All of this has to be good enough to draw attention as well, and let's say it does. Depending on the depth of your wallet will determine how well you want your show to be made, because when it comes to the nitty-gritty of animating a cartoon is where you're going to be spending the most. So you've come up with an idea, and now it's time to choose the animation style. How do you want it to look in your eyes? You have several types of ways you can animate, starting with the easiest, which is 2D animation, just a straight flat universe of characters. One of the easiest and cheapest styles to use when animating. Most big budget shows and movies nowadays, more often than not, use 3D CGI animation coupled with motion capture animation to create extremely detailed forms of movement, from accurate ranges of motion on body parts all the way down to physics behavior, such as a ball bouncing or light reflecting off of certain objects. Before we even start drawing or animating anything, we need scripts written, and we need voices to bring your characters to life. Who will those voices be? If you do them all, it saves quite a bit of money. If not, expect to be paying $10,000 to upwards of $200,000 or more, depending on who you want voicing your characters. And I'm talking those kinds of numbers per episode, not just some one-time price. And there's still more to do before you even start animating then. The drawings of your show must be storyboarded by a team of people who create the dialogue and a lot of the art. And just one of these guys is making a decent six-figure salary of $100K a year, or roughly $50 an hour. And you'll most likely have a group of 6 or more storyboarders and artists during this step. Once that process is done, now you're finally on animating. And that's when the animators who are making $70+ an hour step in and take the reins, now having to pay a whole new section of staff. The majority of people who look into making a cartoon will just see people on Adobe Animate making 2D keyframed animations and think that's all there is to it, when they don't have a clue of the arduous work that is animating a cartoon. So some of the stuff I'm about to dive into is even a little hard for my degenerate monkey brain to fully understand. But I can say this for sure, this type of work is no child's play. Big boy brains and pants only for this section. You may bring your cartoon idea and assets into a major studio and think to yourself, these guys have top of the line computers. We'll have a season animated in a cinch, when you couldn't be any further from wrong.
Ignorance is bliss.
Making a 3D character with top-notch graphics and movements could have you end up with something made up of over 2.5 million polygons or more, or even something as simple as dragging that across the screen could make a PC of $9,000 and up bog down and reach its limits. These are just the models, never mind taking into account creating background and foreground that has to have light and shadows properly reflected while having moving objects and characters. Once it reaches this level of quality, it can take up to hours of work per frame, even on the most powerful of PCs. This is where these things called render farms come into play. Essentially, a render farm works how a crypto mining farm would work, but instead of it solving algorithms on the blockchain, it is instead hundreds of CPUs or more working in unison to simulate and render everything in your cartoon, and also run a physical dynamic simulation, which calculates all the physics such as weight, gravity, air, resistance, range of motion. It's all taken into account, and a render farm can do this in minutes, where for one person on one PC, this could be months of work for this high level of detail. Running a render farm can cost at most $1 million to run and render high quality cartoons. This is because animators are always trying their best to make what I think of it as fake real life. Characters you know are not real and can sometimes do the humanly impossible, but at the same time, their movements and mannerisms are just so spot on, you can't help but relate to that character, or even wish they were actually real. With technology advancing so rapidly, the ability to push this wacky realism further is incredible to watch unfold, as I see more and more aspects and properties of real life come into play in these shows. This is a huge reason why they're paid so much. Animators will go as far as actually visiting areas that they're drawing to get accurate textures of what they're drawing, or smashing a glass to see how it spreads, or splashing water to understand the properties and movement of it, trying to make what they can draw come to life the absolute best they can. As you can see, before we've even released our cartoon, we've already spent upwards of over $4 million on your hit cartoon, not even counting yet the advertising that was spent to give your show popularity and increasing the value of the show in general. But because our cartoon falls under the consumer category of Google's cost per click search network, it makes you have to pay a little bit more. And if you're running ads year round, it will be roughly $120,000 a year to have your show be advertised. This few million or so you spent seems like a lot, but if it's popular enough and you're blessed with prime TV slots after the evening news and each viewer on TV is considered roughly $1 in ad revenue and you achieve 10 million viewers on your cartoon, you have already made your money back. Don't forget what we said earlier about your show being marketable. So now toys, video games, DVD releases, streaming services, or streaming your show, all of this pays you back tenfold. But every single last step of this process is all depending on your imagination and creativity. Can you create another fan following similar to what The Simpsons have done? You also can't forget a show like the one we theoretically built didn't start the same way as all these famous cartoons. It all started with a pencil drawing on paper. No money needed, because creativity is priceless. No amount of money you can throw at a turd can make it better. A brilliant show stands out regardless of the money put into it. This goes for everything in life. Money means nothing at the end of the day. What has the most value is what you carry in your mind as well as your heart.
Who would have thought such mighty oaks or such a powerful nation could grow out of something so fragile, so pure? Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed this financial breakdown of creating a cartoon. I had a lot of fun making this, and I learned a huge amount in my week of research into this. It really makes me look at the animated shows and movies I watch a lot differently now. If any of you guys have more info on this subject, please mention it in the comments, and like and subscribe. Peace, y'all.